you ready to do this?
Well, every former athlete wishes they could go back.
Love the game. It gave me so much.
You know, because we all got hoop dreams.
This is A New Path, a sports podcast, hosted by Peyton Schmitz.
What's going on, New Path podcast fans? I know, right? 2 episodes in 2 weeks. Consistency. It's great. This week, we've got the University of Toledo Deputy Athletic Director, Connor Whelan. Connor, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
So, let's just kind of dive into your athletic career.
Yeah.
How'd you get started early on? Were you you're a cross-country runner. We'll get into that later, but was there anything else you did? Were you a soccer player?
Yeah, I did a little bit of everything. I played baseball, played hockey, wrestled. Didn't play football, funny enough, but I did a little bit of everything. And, for me, like growing up, I was really little as a kid. And so, big into wrestling. Pittsburgh's a big wrestling community. And, I was probably about 4'11" when I got to high school, and wrestling 103, 119, and then I went to 157, and that jump's a little difficult to make in Pennsylvania. And so I was running at the time, ran in middle school as well, and figured I was pretty decent at it, and so it all worked out. Ended up flipping over, focusing my time on running, and the latter half of high school, and had some opportunities at Division I level. It was a good experience.
Yeah, so it's gotta kind of unpack that a little bit. You chose cross country. Did you do track as well, or
did both? Yep.
Okay, so you did distance running and track.
Did both. Yep.
Did you have a preference? Do you prefer running cross country or track?
Probably changed over time. I enjoyed cross country in high school, and then the standardization in college, like where there's just less variables, right? Obviously, cross country, like you go to a course, you don't know what to expect. Things change along the way. Track, you roll up to any track in the country, right? You know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Indoors a little different because the distances change, but by and large it's the same. And so for me, kind of changed over time, but I liked track a little bit more as I got older.
Yeah. You ever run over there, grab a shot put, and joke around?
No, we did. When I was in college, we did like a decathlon for non-decathletes, and it's one of those things like just had no top-end speed whatsoever. So like I couldn't sprint worth anything. Javelin always looked like it would be fun, right? Shot put. I needed to probably put on about 150 lbs if I wanted to shot put, and I can't jump worth anything. So high jump, long jump, no prayer there.
Just the running, huh?
That's right.
Just
That's right.
Running. Well, that's fair. Clearly you're good at it, Division I runner at Kent State, another school in the MAC here. Obviously, you guys probably know by now, student here at the University of Toledo. So, what was that process like? Yeah,
it was one of those things where, I was in high school and was my junior year. I was okay. I wasn't great, but I was good. And so I knew that there might be some opportunities if I performed up to a certain level my senior year. And senior year cross country, I was okay. Like I was good, not great again. But then I really turned the corner in spring track. And in the wintertime, I went up to Kent and did a high school indoor race there and fell in love with the campus, talked to the coach, and went up, did a recruiting visit there. And it's one of those things like, recruiting visit-wise, you go on these visits, and at least for me at the time, right, things have changed in 10 years, but
right.
Or I guess 14 years. But for me, it was just about the connection with the guys. Like the guys at Kent were awesome, and walked away from that visit, and I was like, this is where I want to be, And so it was a great decision. My college career was up and down. I've little doubt that, if I probably would have run somewhere else, maybe my career would have been a little better running-wise, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Like my whole college experience was awesome, set me up for life. So I have zero regrets about any of it.
Yeah, Olympics are going on. Granted, it's the Winter Olympics, not the Summer Games. But did you ever, your coach ever be like, "Hey, go to an Olympic trial"?
So funny enough, first of all, you got to qualify. But like, I'll give you 2 stories. So our coach in college was and a three-time Olympian, like, multi-time U.S. champ in the steeplechase, which is the 3,000-meter race where you jump over the barrier, water jump, all that good stuff. And so if you want to be an elite distance runner, like if you go watch I'm 6'1". You can't tell sitting down, but I'm taller. If you want to be an elite distance runner, you probably got to top out at about 5'5", 5'6". Like you look at the start line at the Olympics, these are little dudes, and they probably weigh between 105 and 115. Even in college, like at my best, that was probably 145. And so, you've got that piece of it. Then the second piece of it is, just the way that distance running is, it takes a toll on you over time. There was a guy that I ran with in college who was really talented runner, wins the MAC championship twice his senior year, 5K and 10K.
Wow.
Definitely good enough to, go run in the trials. And, it was one of those things where he was just like, look, I did everything I wanted to do. All I ever wanted was to win a MAC championship, like no aspirations to go run at the trials, and just called it a day. And so, I kind of let it go when I graduated. Like I said, it's so time consuming. It's not like football or basketball where you get an off season. Like summer's your base period, fall's cross country, winter's indoor track, spring's outdoor track. And so it's just nonstop training. And so when I graduated, I was like, I'm done. And then, kind of picked it back up a couple years ago and got in good shape again. And it was fun. It's the nice thing about running is it's like golf, right? Like you can do it at any time of life. Like you can't be 6 years old playing football,
Right.
So that's been a nice part about, the sport is I can go, for a run at any time.
Yeah. Do you you mentioned you got back into it.
Yeah.
Do you ever just casually just run for, or maybe I think it's the Glass City Marathon?
Yeah. I'm not quite in good enough shape to do. I probably could finish the Glass City Marathon. I couldn't be very competitive. And the Glass City Marathon is a very competitive race. But so it's probably 2 years ago. I started, running again and doing like 3 miles a day. And I started to build up. And finally, September rolls around and I was like, I'm gonna run in a race. Like I'm gonna hop in a marathon and just see what I can do. And so the goal was I want to break 3 hours. And sure enough, I survived, but I broke 3 hours and ran like 2:58 or something like that in Tupelo, Mississippi, and it was such a great experience. And so you walk away from that and you're like, man, I can't wait for the next one. So like start to get really serious and gearing up and training. And I'm working full time, by the way, so this is not like the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right.
And I'm living in Mississippi, which honestly is a great place for training, just because you've got not a ton of people. You've got all this flat open space, and Jackson Marathon rolls around in February, and I was in tremendous shape for being 30 years old, and went out, won the Jackson Marathon, ran 2:42, and that was an awesome experience. Now I was not able to replicate that beyond that. Like I had to shut it down for a little bit just because. When you're an old dude, I mean, I'm not that old, right? But like when you're not in college, you just can't sustain that level for a long time and transition jobs and all that stuff. But it's a great sport. I mean, it's a great, thing where you can go out and clear your mind for a little bit. And so it's been fun even now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you kind of led right into it, talking about changing jobs and everything.
Yeah.
You were at Kent State.
Yep.
And then how did you get to, what was the journey like to get to Toledo right now?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I remember I had a GA job lined up at Duquesne in Pittsburgh. And it was one of those things that, like, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in college. I knew, I wanted to be an athletics director. There was a big part of me that wanted to do that, but I still had other options that were out there. And so I'm applying for MBA roles. I had a GA job basically lined up at Duquesne, kind of falls through. Opportunity pops up at the University of Arkansas, GA job. Take it, had never been to Arkansas before. Go down there, work for the Razorbacks for 2 years. It was awesome. Got my MBA from the Walton College, which is a really good MBA program, and had a ton of fun and learned a lot in the 2 years there. And so then I take the Arkansas job and I go even further south and become the director of marketing at Louisiana Lafayette. And that was a great experience. Our head football coach was Billy Napier, who obviously was just let go at the University of Florida, and now the head coach, James Madison. But we had a ton of success at Louisiana with Napier. I think, in the 3 years I was there, my last 2 years, I think we lost a total of maybe 3 or 4 games. won
Yeah.
multiple conference championships, and I worked with some amazing people. Our team at Louisiana was so talented. Our number one communications guy is currently the head of communications at Purdue. The number two guy is the head of external at Murray State. Our head of external at Louisiana is now the AD at Murray State. Our head of creative became the head of creative at Florida. We just had a loaded administrative team. So we had a ton of fun together there. I went from director to assistant AD at Louisiana. Tremendous experience, won a bunch of football games. Opportunity pops up to go to Wake Forest. And for me, I was comfortable at Louisiana. Like I had won, like we were winning, nonstop. I love that part of it. I love being a part of a team that was continuing to grow. But a couple of my mentors had called me on Wake, and they were like, "Hey, I would hear this out. Like it's Power 4 opportunity. You should explore it." So I go up to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and funny enough, Jeff Long, who's the athletics director at Arkansas, I text him about the job, and I said, "What do you think about Wake?"
Yeah.
He calls me immediately, and he was like, "When are you going to Winston-Salem?" And, talk about dates. He's like, "I'm literally flying in to Winston-Salem as well because I'm moving there." Like his wife's dad was moving into a nursing home out there, and so we connect in the airport and have a great conversation, sells me on Wake, and so I go make the move to Wake Forest. I'm there for a year. Again, another great experience. One of the big reasons why I didn't want to go to Wake is because I loved winning at Louisiana, right? Like winning makes this thing fun.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go to a school that historically was not a winner. And sure enough, my 1 year at Wake, we won 11 football games. It was the best season of school history, make the ACC championship, have a ton of fun. My boss at Wake Forest leaves to go to Mississippi State, calls me about a week later, says, "Hey, would love for you to come with me." So I go with him down to Mississippi State. We have a lot of turnover while I'm down there. The AD ends up leaving about 6 months in, goes to Auburn. My boss, who I came with from Wake Forest, goes to Auburn. Mike Leach, our head football coach, passes away. We go through 3 different football coaches, 3 ADs. And so you are in that sort of vacuum where there's so much turnover, and it's a great experience for me. Like obviously you wish that there was more stability while you were there, and I loved my time there. But it teaches you a lot of lessons, and so overall, like I said, I've had a crazy journey, but it's been so fun, and I wouldn't change any part of it for anything.
Yeah, I mean that's a whirlwind right there.
Yeah.
Like all over the place over the span of what, about eight years?
Yeah, 8-9 years. Yeah.
I mean, geez, so far in the South, and now you're up here in Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah.
What was that move like? Who called you and said, "Hey, you should go to Toledo"?
Yeah, so it's funny. My predecessor Al Tomlinson was leaving to go to Tennessee, and I had a couple of people had called me about that and said, "Hey, this is happening. Would you have interest in going to Toledo?" And for me, it was absolutely. I didn't need to be sold on Toledo's brand power in this league. Like we talked about, I went to Kent. Like I knew everything about Toledo. I was sold on the opportunity before we even had a conversation. And my parents still live in Pittsburgh. My siblings live in Pittsburgh. All these places that I had worked, I had not been close to home, right?
Yeah.
And so just the opportunity to get back was awesome. And so Brian Blair calls me. We have a couple conversations. I come to campus, love it, sold on it. Everybody's vision, everybody's excited about the direction of where we're ultimately going. And then the other thing too is there was sort of a big changeover in leadership, right? You have a new president, you have a new provost, you have a number of new VPs on campus. And so for me, that's an exciting period to be a part of, right? Like you're not trying to convince an administration that had been here for a long time, "Hey, this is what we're trying to do." You've got a bunch of people that are aligned in what you're trying to accomplish. And I've worked in places where that's not the case, where there's not alignment, and that can be really difficult. And so to see the alignment here between the university and athletics, everybody rowing in the same direction, everybody believing that athletics can be the tip of the spear, it's been exactly what I thought it would be. So I'm really glad to be here.
Happy to be back in the MAC.
Yeah, I am. I'll tell you what, I really am. One of the things, I think you talk about conference realignment, you see all the rumors on Twitter and stuff. One of the beautiful things about this league is the proximity, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We go play Bowling Green on Saturday, 25 minutes away. Western Michigan, 2 hours away. Kent, Akron, 2 hours away. Like Eastern Michigan, 45 minutes away. that's a beautiful thing, right? Like every league that I've been in, even the Sun Belt, which is sort of the peer conference for the MAC in the South, there's no close schools like that, right? I mean, you don't have your 2-hour road trip anywhere, and so I'm really glad to be back in the MAC.
All over the place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, what was like the average, I guess, travel time for a game?
Oh man, depends on the league. SEC, probably 4.5, 5 hours. Sun Belt was probably roughly the same. I mean, the same geographical footprint, maybe a little less. I mean, you probably call it 3.5. ACC was massive just because it's so stretched out north to south. You've got Boston College at the top half of the league. You've got Miami at the south part, and now you look at the ACC and you've got teams in California. So the travel time was all over. But certainly geographically, MAC's definitely been the most compact.
Yeah, it stayed that way too, except for Northern Illinois leaving after this season, which we added UMass, so kind of works out.
That's right. Yeah, added UMass, and UMass is a trip. I mean, like we've played up there for basketball. I think the women's team plays there next week, if I'm not mistaken, but that's obviously a flight. And so, I think probably from a fan's perspective, sometimes people are like, well, why don't you add this school or why don't you add that school? Those are costly things to do, right? Like if North Dakota State joining the Mountain West. Well, if they were to join the MAC, every one of your sport programs has to fly out there. That's difficult. Sending your soccer team, sending your volleyball team, sending your tennis teams, like it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so just the fact that we have so many schools close together, it's really nice for everybody.
Yeah, kind of jumping back into you though, like you're here at Toledo. How's your time being a runner, especially here in the MAC? Kind of helped you with the position you find yourself in now?
Man, it's a good question. I think probably the biggest thing I would say is being a cross-country runner, and I had good perspective in college. You recognize where you're at on the totem pole of things, right? Like, you're not football, you're not men's basketball. And so for me, trying to find points of appreciation that we could show those student athletes. And so, a couple great examples. Our men's cross country program, our women's cross country program, both had the individual champs and the team champions. We put billboards around town for both, for both the individual and team champions, just to show appreciation. Women's tennis, had the individual champion in the fall. Same thing, putting a billboard up takes no effort on our part, but it just shows like, hey, your success at the University of Toledo matters, right? I mean, we had a ton of really good people come through, and this is not a knock on the administration of Kent or anything like that. It's just kind of status quo everywhere, And we had a national champion wrestler at Kent. We had a national champion hammer thrower at Kent. We had a number of Olympians that were on the team when I was there in track. And we didn't really do anything to celebrate them other than maybe a social media post or things like that. And so I think the biggest thing I would tell you is it just gives you perspective of like, hey, how can we show even a little bit of appreciation, to the student athletes that put so much time and effort into, advancing University of Toledo athletics.
Right. And when you look back at things, you kind of mentioned it earlier that, you're thankful for the time you had in athletics and it kind of ended at the right time. Was there ever a moment where you were like, I kind of don't want to be done?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it probably ran its course at the right time. I had an extra year of eligibility, and my senior year, redshirt junior year, I was training like an animal, and I kind of had told myself going to that, like, I'm gonna swing for the fences or die trying, right? Like, it's easy to get hurt if you're overtraining, and I was definitely overtraining, and it was just one of those things where it was like, I'm gonna have the best year humanly possible, or I'll get hurt. Like, I don't want to be mediocre, plain and simple, and so ended up getting hurt the end of the year, and I had just decided I'm done. Like, I'm not going to try and rehab and get back into shape next year. I had explored a grad transfer, like, because again, I was looking to, do my MBA, and so like Youngstown State, for instance, was one where like I was interested in, and they were really good in their league too, and so it would have made some sense. But when I went down, I was just kind of like, you know what, my time's up. Like, it's just time for the next chapter. So it honestly wrapped up pretty well for me, just because I was able to move on, go to Arkansas, not worry about running as a grad student. Like, just was easy to turn the page.
Yeah. It's kind of turned into a recurring question here on the show. Every athlete we bring on, I always ask, it's like, or I guess former athlete. Why do you think that everybody kind of has the same notion when it comes to athletics? Like, okay, like, yeah, my time ended and I'm okay with it. You see people go into working in the sports. I mean, you find yourself in that situation as well. Why do you think everybody just kind of has the same sort of, yeah, it's okay. Like, it's few and far between that somebody's like, yeah, I was pissed that my time was over.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably because the longer you do the sport, the more perspective you have, and so, I mean, I felt like I certainly had better perspective as, a senior than I did when I was in high school. I think when you're younger, it's a matter of life and death. Like, one of the great example I use all the time, like, think about when you played Little League Baseball, right? It was a matter of life and death when you won those games. Way more important than when you were in high school. And the reason being is because you had nothing else to fall back on when you were a little kid. Like, that was it.
Yeah.
There was no social circle that you could fall back on. Like, that was it. And so I think for me, like, the older you got, the more perspective you had. And it was just like, you know what, this has been great for me. But I'm ready for whatever's next. Like, it's time for a new chapter. Like, I've done this for years. And for me, there was probably a little bit of burnout there. It was just like, I'm ready to do the next thing. I don't know exactly what the next thing is, but I'm ready for it. And so there's probably a little bit of relief in that sense too.
Yeah. Is there anything you've done over your time working in college athletics, like you've seen athletes that you think might have a hint of burnout? Or do you ever take them aside and be like, hey, like, I see you, it's okay?
I think the biggest thing is, the best advice I could give anybody is it is not a matter of life and death. And I'm the worst offender of that. Like, I make no mistake about it. But, like, I wish I would have enjoyed the time, running when I was in college more than I did. Like, I made it, like, epic success or epic failure, no in between, right? And so I didn't enjoy that part of it as much. I enjoyed the social elements, like all the guys on the team, they were great friends of mine, still great friends of mine to this day. But I made sort of the athletic performance piece, way more important than it needed to be. And my buddy who won the MAC championship, he had a great line for me a couple years after he had won. I'm over his house and he's got his trophy on the stand or whatever, and I was like, how cool is that you can look back at that? And he was like, honestly, not as cool as you think. He said, it's just one of those things that he said, I don't give it a second thought really today. He's like, it was cool at the time, but like outside of that, like, didn't change my life, whether I would have won or not. And so that's the biggest thing is you got to take some of the pressure off. Today it's honestly worse probably than it's ever been just because of social media, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
particularly for the bigger sports, you're reading about yourself online and people tweeting at you. Like, I didn't have that problem when I was in college, but you just got to remind yourself that it's supposed to be fun and you got to enjoy yourself because there is a time limit on it, right? Like, you don't get to do it infinitely. There's an expiration date on it for everybody, and so you got to enjoy that window while it exists.
Right. And in today's day and age, you kind of mentioned earlier with, transfer portals and NIL and all that extra stuff. And we won't get too into detail about all of that. But, like, do you think that impacts the mental capacity of the athlete to just deal with being, especially in college?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I won't go into like specific details, but there's a number of stories that, I think clearly outline that, right? Like, you got guys that are at the mid-major level that are checked out because they want to move up a level and make more money. You got guys at the major level that maybe sit on the bench and make a lot of money, and they don't want to drop down and take a pay cut, even if it means being a star. And it is a really, really complicated deal. And I think the other thing, too, there's probably plenty of stories where guys, rightfully so, transferred up to go make a lot more money when they didn't want to leave. They enjoyed their experience at school. I'm sure there are University of Toledo athletes in the past that, decided to leave to go make more money somewhere else that didn't want to leave, but financially it's a no-brainer. And so you got to I know people get upset with those individuals, but you got to put yourself in their shoes. Like, most of us would make that decision as well if we had the opportunity, especially when you're talking about the amounts of money that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it absolutely affects them. I've zero doubt about that.
Yeah. I mean, for every athlete that leaves, there's the one that stays. I mean, everybody talks about Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, spot on.
And, the story of him staying here in Toledo and then turns around and wins the Super Bowl the next year, which I guess congratulations, Max and Hook. back-to-back
That's
Super Bowl
right.
champions from Toledo.
That's
So,
right. I mean, the other thing too is like to that point. Think about Emmanuel McNeil Warren. You know, he easily could have said, you know what, appreciate my time at Toledo. My last year, I'm going to go somewhere else, make a lot of money. He could have done that, and he didn't. Stuck around for another year. The thing that's so impressive about him is that it would have been easy for him. Finishes the season, you know, Jason Candle leaves to go to UConn. We play in a bowl game that the outcome is more or less irrelevant, right? He easily could have sat out and said, you know what, I'm going to be a first-round NFL pick. I'm not playing. He didn't. You know, he went out, he played, fought to the very end of that game. That is admirable, like extremely, extremely admirable. And so you're spot on. Like there are definitely some examples of guys that have turned down a lot of money to, you know, stay at a university at Toledo, and Emmanuel's gonna, you know, he's gonna be rewarded for it. You know, he's gonna get paid really well here, and hopefully come April he's a first-round pick.
yeah, hopefully. That'd be great. So as we kind of get towards the end here, I always like to kind of wrap up with these two final questions. One, is there anything that throughout your college career or just your athletics journey in general that you wish you had done differently? If you could hop in a time travel machine and go change it, is there anything you would change, or are you okay with it?
Well, I'd say two things. Number one, definitely okay with how everything turned out, right? Like if I could go back and change anything and it would change the outcome, I wouldn't do it. Like so I'll preface it by saying that if I could hop in a time traveling machine and meet, you know, 18-year-old me walking onto campus, I think the thing that I would tell myself is, do not take this so seriously. Have fun. This is like I mentioned earlier. There's a short window for yourself to enjoy this. Like, take the pressure off. Everything's gonna be fine, right? You're gonna work everything out. Enjoy this window while you got it. I enjoyed parts of it. I didn't enjoy all of it. I should have enjoyed all of it, you know. And that's the thing I'd tell our student athletes today, right? Like, you know, whether it's regardless of what program it is, you know, every program is going to go through slumps. Every individual player is going to go through slumps. You got a small window of this thing. Enjoy it. Work your way out of it. You're going to be fine. This is a long game, right? And so, to answer your question, I wouldn't change anything about my journey. I wish I would have taken a little less seriously when I was in college, but I had an awesome experience.
Right. And then, final question for you: is there really any like, if you could get it down to one word, like what's the word of advice you would have to current athletes out there, whether they're collegiate, high school, middle school, elementary, it doesn't matter. Any athlete out there, like what's the one word of advice you have? Is it not take it so seriously?
I think that's part of it, but I think the second piece is you got to be resilient. You know, like resiliency is the key to just about anything, and it's not always going to be, progression is not linear in sports ever, you know, and so the sooner you come to grips with that, the happier you'll be, you know, and so I think a big piece of it is resilience. You know, I'm talking about before we hopped on air, like men's basketball, right? And we've lost a couple close games this year. I think we've lost 5 games by combined 20 points. And how resilient are you going to be battling through that? You know, that's tough. That's really, really tough. We've been in every single game and dropped a couple close ones. And, you know, you've got to find a way to get up off the mat and you know, play the next play, you know. And so I think the more resilient you are during your career, that will translate over, you know, to the real world, right? So that when you're in the job market and things don't go your way, you don't just hang your head or look for another job. That's, I think, probably one of the knocks on the current transfer portal, right? Is that when things don't go people's way, they just say, well, you know what, I'm leaving, you know. And the more resilient you are, the more that you can, or the more you're willing to fight those battles, I think the better off you're going to be when you ultimately go out into the real world.
Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. Are you a big social media guy?
I am.
Look at the camera. Do you have any social media followings you'd like people to check out?
At Whelan UT on Twitter, or X, I should say. And yeah, obviously follow at Toledo Rockets on social media to see all the latest and greatest of what we got going on. And make sure to come out to Savage Arena here to support the men's and women's basketball team coming down the stretch.
You got anything you can preview for us? Any fun plans that the athletic department has?
We've got a bunch of fun stuff that's coming up, but the biggest thing I'd say the next 2 weeks, we've got bus trips to BG. So this weekend we got the women's basketball program playing Eastern Michigan, followed by a bus trip to Bowling Green. So the students will go down to the men's game at BG, and then the following weekend we're going to do the inverse. So men play Eastern Michigan. We're going to take a bus full of students down to BG for the women's game. So love for you to join us for that. You can look for it on social media, but we'll look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of the New Path Podcast. Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we've got Sonia from the Mud Hens, formerly. We'll get into that later, but join us next week for that. Have a great week, everybody.